Three. We're live, Greg. Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. This is the Belize Affairs Show number 140 for Friday, 10th of May of 2024. We hope to bring you a good program tonight, and with your indulgence, we'll follow the format that we have always used. That is to say, we'll have a short prayer, followed by a short reading, and then we'll proceed. Greg, do you want to play a small music after the reading, or you want us to go right into the program? Greg?
Yes, we will play a small music
Okay.
following the reading and we go into the program.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So I'll just go ahead then and bow my head for a second and do a short prayer.
Right.
Divine loving Father, we thank thee for this privilege that thou have accorded us to come before thy presence once more. We ask that thou mayest continue to have mercy upon us, that thou mayest continue to bless us, thou knowest our heart, our desires, even our most secret thoughts. Please continue to bless our country of Belize, its people and its leadership. Please continue to bless this country of the United States, its people and its leadership. And please continue to bless the rest of humanity, especially those people who are in harm's way and are being hurt, sometimes for no justifiable reason. Please be merciful unto us all. We pray that thou must bless this program and that thou must help us to be of some positive impact on our society of Belize. Amen. I'll do a short reading here from let's see, just a second. Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes chapter 6, starting at verse 1, reads as follows. There is an evil which I have seen under the sun, and it is common among men, a man to whom God hath given riches, wealth, and honor, so that he wanted nothing for his soul of all that he desired. Yet God giveth him not power to eat thereof, but a stranger eateth it. This is vanity, and it is an evil disease. Verse 3, if a man beggeth 100 children and live many years, if a man begot, that is to give birth to have descendants of 100 children, and live many years, so that the days of his years be many, and his soul be not filled with good, and also that he have no burial, I say that an untimely birth is better than he. Amen. That's the ending of our reading for tonight. Greg, do you want to grace us with a short music, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ancestors them get glory. After war and fight for this land, today I feel proud to be Belizean. And every time I walk through the streets, I feel so blessed, so good and so free. And every time my foot touch the beach, I feel so at peace, thanking God for my country. And I don't know how it make you feel when the breeze such a frack as you start to chew up, but I'm kinda living in a fantasy. It's the only place that I wanna be. My Belize, my homeland by the sea, beautiful with the trees and valleys, culture rich with a one big family, all the way from the mountains to the keys. Your vacation dream is home to me.
Thank you very much, Greg, for that musical rendition. Um, uh, Tonight, being Friday, we're going to deal with some constitutional matters as well as some legal and case law issues. Um, I'm Leonard Brackett, your chairman for tonight's program, and we have our next uh, panelist and chief engineer, Mr. Gregory Brackett. Uh, our next panelist, who normally grace our show as part of the Troika, is not available tonight for other reasons, and so I'll not stipulate those other reasons, but I'll just make that as a note for the public to be aware that we will be taking on extra duty tonight because we have to carry Mr. Wade part and do justice on his behalf. And so, without any much more ado, I'd just like to turn over to Mr. Gregory Brackett for his introduction and formal first comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir.
Good night to people at home and abroad. And thank you for tuning in to this 140th episode of Belizean Affair. I am Gregory Brackett, sitting with my cousin, Mr. Leonard Brackett, the chairman for tonight's episode. Thank you for tuning in. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, sir. Tonight program will kick off with part of the Constitution. Before I go into it, I'd just like to say that for some reason or another, our current government or the people who are leading and being responsible for our governance affairs have an interest in pulling our Belize Constitution. They did not get elected on any such mandate or manifesto or any such declaration to the public that would have been part of their expected effort, so that people could have then be justified to know that this was an agenda that the public signed up to. However, after the public was so dissatisfied with the previous administration under the Barrow leadership and wanting to get rid of that particular governance, we gave that power to the now governance group because they declared that they were going to do better than the previous administration and they were going to be law-abiding. They was going to be truthful, honest. They was going to do all the things that we were demanding of the previous government that the previous government didn't do. But as soon as they got into power, they started delivering to us a bunch of shell-shock news and actions leading up to where we are today. Previously, they started out with the idea that they just want to send out a group of people to ask questions and find out whether or not the people in the country wanted their constitution changed. No, I don't know how they went about arriving at that point because I didn't hear no hue and cry from the general public that they wanted to tamper with their constitution or that their constitution did not seem to be good enough for us to get the governance that we deserve and the governance that we were asking for. All we were asking them to do was, first of all, put UNCAC in place. That is the United Nations Commission against corruption in government. Why? Because the previous government and governments before then and the current government, we were hoping, would cease and desist. They are taking the assets of the public unto themselves and then do not prosecute each other on our behalf so that they can return those assets or that we can get them back. They did not do that. Instead, they went ahead and they started creating laws contrary to the existing constitution and pretending that the existing constitution, as they had stipulated before, they have no regards for. And apparently, once the power of governance was assented to them, they had no need or use for the present constitution. Therefore, they went on to violate it, to bastardize it, and to do all manner of evil contrivances against the mandate of the Constitution and against also the well-being of the people. We can recall that there was a case where the learned judge had stipulated that our previous government under the Barrow administration had attempted to declare themselves in the legislature as being the supreme legislator. That is, that they will legislate whatever the laws they want. And because there's, according to that change that they wanted to make in the Constitution, or that they actually did make in the Constitution, but was ruled unconstitutional, null and void, and incorrect, their attempt was to grasp power, or to overreach, and to declare unto themselves the ultimate power above that of the Constitution, and dictating that even in Section 20 requirements of the Constitution, which is a separation of powers issue, the judges could not block any of the laws that the government tried to sanction and put in place through the legislature, that for all intents and purposes, it's all exhaustive as to any remedy to correct their overreach and grasping for power when they added in our Constitution Section 69(9), as well as Section 2, Part 2, Section 2, Subsection 2, which for all intents and purposes says that the Constitution was being overridden and would not then be as stipulated in Section 2(1). In other words, the subsection 2 trumped the subsection 1. That attempt was made by the Barrow administration, and the matter went to court under a case that they had, one case with the Boeing, another case with the telephone company. And for all intents and purposes, the judge ruled that Section 2, Subsection 2 is null and void and should be stricken out of the Constitution. The Barrow government did not follow through and abided by the ruling of the High Court. That matter went to the Supreme Court. It went to the Belize highest appellate court, and it went to the Regional Court of Jurisdiction, the Caribbean Court of Justice. I'll read a little bit of what the judges concluded in that particular case, and in the instance of the overreach and power grab by the legislative body to declare themselves the supreme legislator of the land and the supreme law of the land, trumping the Constitution, because we know, as in Section 2 of the Constitution, subsection 1, it says, the law of Belize, the Constitution is the supreme law of Belize. It didn't say the legislator. So there's an issue of the supremacy clauses as well. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And what the Constitution stipulates, the legislator cannot trump unless they go to the plebiscite and have the public declare through a plebiscite that they want to have those particular sections of the Constitution that the lawmakers are not empowered to deal with on their own. So let me get back to the case. Okay. The case came from a citation under what is called it a law, and the case number was 7738. In the Supreme Court of Belize, AD 2012, claims number 597 of 2011, which said by the British Caribbean Bank Limited and the Attorney General of Belize and the Minister of Public Utilities. Just a second here. It's like a 80-page ruling, 81 pages basically. So no way are we going to be able to entertain discussing all 81 pages or reading all 81 pages. In one of our first programs, we started doing that and continued on through a few other programs thereafter. We had the Constitutional Hour on a previous platform by the name of Sensoman. And prior to that, we used to have discussions on the G-Mike show with CY. But that's historical. I'm just making historical reference because I'm going to, like I said, I'm not going to be able to deal with all those pages of documentation. So I had taken out a few highlighted portions that I wanted to bring to the attention of the public for tonight's constitutional and legal case law issues. The judge under page 50, item number 45B, has stipulated by saying the basic structure doctrine. They said the basic structure doctrine holds that the fundamental principles of the preamble of the Constitution of Belize have to be preserved for all times to come, and that they cannot be amended out of existence. I'll read that again for emphasis because no part of the Constitution citations you will find this statement, because this statement comes from dealing with the theories of legalese, legal structure of constitution, and constitutional self-preservation criteria. That is that each constitution is self-preserving unless it is overthrown by a martial law or an overthrow of the government by any entity that comes in and take over the government and decide to dispense with the previous constitution, the one that we currently have, for example. let's say if somebody was to take over our governance by whatever means they can get it, and then decide to overthrow the Constitution, either by rewriting a new Constitution and or declaring that the Constitution is null and void for all intents and purposes, because, under that system, it will not be accepted. Even though our present Constitution has been changed many times before, bits and pieces that are allowed to be changed and will continue to be changed until apparently they succeed at the venture that they're on, which is to amend or eviscerate the present Constitution. I'll read it over like I said. The basic structure doctrine holds that the fundamental principles of the preamble of the Constitution have to be preserved for all times to come, and that they cannot be removed or amended out of existence. On page 53 of the same ruling, it goes on to say, as I see it, declared the judge, fundamental rights in a constitution are inherent and cannot be extinguished by a constitutional or constitutional or statutory provision. But I didn't write the whole thing. I kind of I did a shorthand, right? And I was almost not able to read my shorthand just now. But that's what it. Let me just start the reading all over again for that part, because I want it to be clear what is it that is being implied there or stipulated. The judge in that case on page 53, item number 49, stipulated or said, as I see it, fundamental rights in a constitution are inherent and cannot be extinguished, erased by a constitutional or statutory provisions, and any law that abrogates or extinguishes such rights would be violative of the basic structure doctrine. So that's a clarification for the basic structure doctrine, as well as an emphatic endorsement of the basic structure doctrine. I'll proceed by reading page 53, item number 54. Page 53 and 54. Well, I won't read the whole page, of course. I'll read just the part that I have highlighted here. And it says, the submission, said the judge, that the National Assembly of Belize can, subject to the limitations contained in section 69(2), subsection 2, and subsection 3, as well as subsection 4 of the Constitution, that they can make any amendment to the Constitution which seems, as shown above, to ignore the intentions of the makers or framers of the Constitution as propounded in its preamble. That is to say, contrary to what a lot of people like to say in Belize, or contrary to what the lawmakers them and the politicians them are trying to inculcate in the minds of the people, that they can make just about any changes that they want, so long as they have the 2/3 or the 3/4. They fail to remember that those stipulations have conditions placed on them. That is that the conditions for those particular thresholds of 3/4 and 2/3 is for specific sections of the Constitution. It says nothing about the issue of separation of powers or of the fundamental rights, that they can violate your fundamental rights if they have 2/3% of the vote in Congress or 75% of the vote in Congress, because those issues are what the Constitution calls fundamental rights, inalienable rights, as well as we cited here just now, the separation of powers. The government could not and should not have tried to, under the Barrow administration, to declare themselves to be above the constitution of the country, because that's a separation of powers issue, and they have no authority to trump that separation of power doctrine. Uh, before I go any further, I'd like to ask if Greg has a comment on the parts that I've just dealt with, so that I can move on thereafter to some other parts. But I didn't want to belabor too much of the information without giving him a chance to weigh in. So I'll just yield to you, Greg.
A prime example of what you are speaking about, Mr. Chairman, is Part 1 of the Belizean Constitution, Section 2, Subsection 2.
Yes, sir.
Subsection 2 was input by the last administration and
Exactly.
reads as follows. The word other law occurring to subsection 1 of this section do not include a law to alter any of the provision of the Constitution which is passed by the National Assembly in conformity with Section 69 of the Constitution. Now, what that is simply stating, let me give you an example. The unconstitutional state of emergency, which is inconsistent with the Constitution.
Right?
In both Section 1, 2, subsection 2, they try to take out subsection 2 of Part 1, which says this Constitution is the supreme law of Belize.
Exactly.
And if any other law is inconsistent with the Constitution,
Greg,
that other law shall...
Greg, before I finish reading the rest of that, can I superimpose a thought right there quickly? When it refers to any other law, please explain that part for us there to the public before you finish up the statement now that you was reading, so people can understand what other law is referring to.
What the Constitution is speaking about when it says any other law that is inconsistent with the Constitution, it means any substantive law that is made by the legislature that violates your fundamental rights, Section 3 through 19, which is protected by Section 20, which
as well as the
gives
separation of power,
the power to seek judicial review. And not only that, Section 20 is also protected by the Referendum Act, which
right?
the government know they cannot violate. So it's not only the basic structure of the Constitution that they cannot change with their supermajority, but the Referendum Act is also there to protect one's fundamental rights. And in order for the government, in order for the government to violate this right, he must first ask you if you are willing to give up that right. And let me express this to the people again. The only time some of your rights can be taken away from you is under Section 18(2) of the Constitution, when there is a state of emergency and
valid, Greg, valid preface
That
valid
is
state
correct.
of emergency, because these clowns that we have there, they constantly declare bogus, non-valid emergency and hoodwink the people and go out there go chance people. So very simple word,
That is correct.
valid.
That is correct. So if any individual would read what the Constitution says as this at this time, Section 1, Part 2, Subsection 2, and Section 69(9), Subsection 9. It is there in black and white to show you how the present government is using from what the previous government has did when they informally amended the Constitution and it was ruled null and void
And
by
unconstitutional by the judge.
by the High Court. I turn it
And,
back to
and,
you,
and
Mr. Chairman.
yes, sir. And that ruling is what you call a stare decisis, or settled law ruling. In other words, it's not a case that just went to the Supreme Court and it didn't go any further. It was a case that went to our Supreme Court, like I said earlier in the program, to our country's highest appellate court, and subsequently to our highest regional court. And that particular matter was sustained and was never taken away or altered by any of the courts. They sustained the ruling that the judge had made initially for the final ruling of that case, in stipulating that that transgression that the legislator committed was null and void and unconstitutional, and they should have taken it out the books. And just as you stated earlier, if anybody was to open right now a copy of the current constitution, they would see that same stale dated, unconstitutional, null and void law that the legislators then try to pass to empower themselves to overrule and override the Constitution. That's a bastardization of our Constitution. And Mr. Barrow, as a learned senior counselor at that, besides being Prime Minister of the day, just because he had the numbers in the Congress like the other guys here have right now, they have the number in Congress to make legislation, then go ahead and then pretend that whatever they decide to do should be all right and well accepted by the people, when the people don't even know what they're doing that is wrong. So they hoodwink the people and commit crimes against the people and the Constitution. And then now the new government in place now is turning around and pretending that while Mr. Barrow did what he did and they had complained, they are now coming in now with their supermajority and turning around and trying to use the same thing that Mr. Barrow did wrong to try and breathe life into it or use it for the same purpose of bastardizing the Constitution. Instead of they come in and clean up the matter, they won't come in and make it worse. I just want to go ahead here for a second.
Mr. Chairman, if I may
Go
add
ahead.
to that,
Go ahead.
the present government has no intention of removing that. As you can see, even though they have a
They're trying to use
supermajority,
it. They're trying to use
there
it.
is a power to them which is the basic structure doctrine that is stopping them from violating one's fundamental rights. And they know this. That is
That's why they're trying to
why
get rid of it.
they are trying to rewrite the Constitution. By so doing, they are trying to get by Section 20.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what they are after. Back to you, sir.
Okay. Um, uh, Greg, do you want to comment a little bit more on Section 20? Because that's what I was about to go into right now. But I just need to launch this thing here quickly now, if you do, just for a minute or so, if you don't mind.
Well, Section 20 is there for judicial review. And in the case that I said, I gave you an example about the unconstitutional state of emergency, where they pick up these young men without they have committed a crime and just want to hold on to them for 30 days. These young men can turn around and sue the government if they can obtain legal representation
Mm-hmm.
because the Constitution is clear in Section 5.5 and you cannot go beyond that. You cannot go beyond Section 5.5. It speaks for itself about being imprisoned by any other individual,
Right.
being picked up and locked up, or is preventing you from traverse and have you in a position. So it speaks for itself.
Okay. So I'll delve into the next section, which is actually dealing with Section 20 of our Constitution that you just prefaced eloquently just now, Mr. Brackett. On page 57 to 58 of the same ruling, item number 55, A, small a in brackets. The judge went on to say the separation of powers doctrine stipulates that tyranny pervades where there is no separation of powers, as stipulated by a previous English legal mind. It is taken for granted, the judge said, that the basic principle of separation of powers will apply to the exercise of their res- respective functions, that is, by the three organs of governance: the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. There is no doubt that the doctrine of separation of powers is a basic or fundamental part of the Constitution of Belize. Uh, that was what the judge declared in that case. There's another section here, um, but I don't have the. I couldn't pull up the item, so I'm going to have to forego that for another presentation. But I would just like to reread this last part over again because these are not words or these are not issues that the general public is familiar with or that they hear often enough to be able to do their own research or be able to recognize or understand the implication of these particular words. But in that particular ruling, the judge was very adamant and explicit in terms of scolding the government and the legislator for overstepping their boundaries and trying to overthrow the separation of powers and the basic doctrines criteria. And there were learned lawyers that were behind trying to get that bastardization process done, which is what surprises me and probably everybody else. How can such learned people at that level be so dastardly and so scofflaw of a mindset that just because the public is not as knowledgeable as they are, that they should try and pull a shell game over the general public and use the authority vested in them as lawmakers to make laws, to contravene the Constitution and make these kind of bad laws. It's a good thing that this matter ended up in court and was ruled on at the three highest levels of our court system. And yet you have these knuckleheads now that are our current governance attempting to go back and pretend like this, like that ruling wasn't made. They have no regard or respect for the ruling. In fact, they don't have no regards or respect for the Constitution, much less any ruling, much less any judge. That's the paradigm that we're dealing with. That's the kind of people and the mindset of people that we're dealing with. Not to come with this hocus pocus about, well, maybe the people that might want to change the Constitution, so let's go and ask them. And then they change after I went ahead and made the supporting acts in Congress to empower the government spending money out of the consolidated fund, because that is basically the only reason why they created that act to sponsor the commission, was because they was going to be using public funds to finance it, and have done so to the tune of multiple millions of dollars so far. Haven't completed their task, but the Prime Minister is waiting for them to complete, and they have not done enough education for them to be able to get the public awareness as to what is that the public wants to take out or put in. But they have their agenda. They know what they want to put in there. So they're just waiting now to hoodwink the public into believing, okay, well, we're going to put in what you want. But we're not telling you that we're putting in what we try to get in there. I yield back to you, Mr. Gregory Brackett, my co-host.
Well, we are dealing with a government who is well on their way to what their agenda is. Because even with the DPA, how can one who is supposed to represent the crown sign over power to a government when they know that is unconstitutional? If you look at the referendum act.
Mr. Brackett, on that point, it is not the Governor General that signed those powers of ascension over, right? It is done under the Governor General's name by the Cabinet Secretary, who is not supposed to be any Deputy Governor General and Cabinet Secretary at the same time, because that's where you have the confusion and the ill will and malpractice occurring under the guise of legal adequate authority. When the Governor General is not available or is indisposed, we should have an independent-minded person who is acting in the capacity as a Governor General, working on behalf and representing the head of state. We should not have a Deputy Governor General acting in the capacity of the Governor General while representing the cabinet and his boss, the Prime Minister. That's an abuse and misuse and contravention of the system. But that's how fast and loose these guys play. When the Prime Minister sent Mr. Stuart Leslie for ascension by the Governor General to be the Deputy Governor General, he damn well knew what he was proposing and trying to get done. As a matter of fact, point of clarity, before Mr. Stuart Leslie became Governor General or was sent to be assented for Governor General, the now current Governor General, Mr. Lam, had to receive the powers from the previous Governor General, Sir Calvin Young. But they played out the game in such a way that they did not want the transfer of power to go from the previous Governor General, Sir Calvin Young, to Mr. Lam, the now incoming new Governor General, which is how the protocol and the process should have operated. They stick the Cabinet Secretary in the middle of them two Governor Generals there to act as acting Governor General. Now, who we gave him that power? Who gave that acting governor general the power to act as governor general? In between these two governor generals, none of them did. Miss Salam was not governor general yet. She could not have assented to it and give that power to him. Belizeans, wake up and listen and learn. Mr. Colville Young, according to them, why they wanted to change him out of the position is because he was elderly and being feeble, and according to them, would not have been in a position to be able to transfer the powers to Mr. Salam adequately. But they had an agenda. They had something that they wanted to have done that they didn't want Mr. Salam to get blamed for, and they couldn't get Mr. Young to agree with and sign off for them. So they sent in cabinet secretary to go do the signing on their behalf. That's the history of what happened. Okay? Most Belizean people who live in Belize, and even many others who live abroad, would have known that if they were following the news when the transfer of power took place, and even before the transfer of power took place, when the request for the transfer of power took place. Before Ms. Salam was even considered as the potential governor general, before her name was sent for ascension, the Prime Minister and Cabinet had it in their wake. And when I say their wake, I mean, like, you know, when a boat they travel and the bow of the boat they push for the water, right? It creates ripples, it creates one wake, right? You know, as the boat go through and pass, you know, there's a wake that is left behind, right? The disturbance of the water. Well, these guys were doing their disturbance of the water from before the appointments became formal. Why? Agendas. But I wrote an article specifically as regards to that issue with the Deputy Governor General. Not that as if I had to write that article to point it out and to let people know and to let the government know that they have been caught red-handedly transgressing the rules and protocols. And even as of today date, Ms. Salam is working on behalf of the head of state appointed to be Governor General to Belize. She should not be found in contravention of the interest of the head of state. Otherwise, she could be fired immediately and forthwith. Because why? She serves at the pleasure of the head of state, not at the pleasure of the Prime Minister who nominated her, because the Prime Minister had no powers to assent to appoint her. He's granted the courtesy of being able to nominate. It's only a courtesy. It's not no power or authority. The power and authority, as the Constitution says, lie in the head of state and may be exercised by the Governor General or people that are subordinate to him or her, in this case, being a lady, Miss Salam. And all these jackals running around in Fui governance systems pretending like nobody knows the difference, nobody knows what's going on, but what's happening is just happening because it's allowed to happen. For all intents and purposes, you have some Belizeans who call themselves elitists, who are supposed to understand and know about this subject matter that I'm talking about here tonight. And as far as they're concerned, they don't care about the violation and the ethics and the morals and the constitutionality or the professionalism of these issues. They're willing to close their eyes and their ears. They see no evil, they hear no evil, and they speak no evil, and say nothing to rile up or to point out the contravention or the travesty. As a matter of fact, what they do is they are beholden to their parties and their party approaches their leaders and whoever is not, more than they are concerned and interested in the well-being of their country, because they're willing to put their party ahead of their country. And when the party does, or the party officials that do anything that's wrong, they are willing to excuse it and even argue how to accept it or how to make it be acceptable. Why? Because it's their party and they don't want their party embarrassed. Well, if they don't want a party embarrassed, just the party shouldn't do anything embarrassing. Simple. I yield back, Mr. Brackett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But
You're
as
welcome,
I
sir.
said, it goes beyond that. Let's not forget that in the past, whenever a governor general is out of the country or naturalty, they would announce that. But as you can see, there is no announcement as to when the governor general depart the country or when she is taken ill. But
Mm-hmm.
let me also express that there's a lot of enterprise, and
Mm-hmm.
she's as guilty as the rest for
Mm-hmm.
what is happening because she knows personally what her job is to do as the DG. And if she can hear laws being passed without asking what happened and how they went through, then something is wrong with that.
On, on that point,
Go
sorry
ahead.
for jumping in. The Constitution specifically stipulates, exactly as you just said, that the Governor General, at the end of the day, is accountable for whatever is going on in Belize. It is written in black and white, right there in the Constitution, under the powers and the office of the Governor General's section in the Constitution. And it says as well, the Governor General has the right and the authority vested in her, in this case, because it's a lady, to question any government activities or to demand from the or request from the government any documentations or clarification to any issue that pertains to the exercise of that executive governance power that is vested in them by virtue of being assented to. That power is not wholly theirs unto themselves for them to do willy-nilly as they wish, but like they say in their own words, they say the Governor General is just a figurehead, and that's how they want it to be represented and how they want it to be. As a matter of fact, they wouldn't want to have a Governor General anyhow. Just this week, we were having a discussion on Facebook with some of the same so-called luminaries and smart people of our society, stating that we're tired of having a foreigner as we head of state, that we need to elect with one head of state. Is that head of state that we elect going to bring us a defense guarantee to a country? Are they going to position us any better in the world in regards to our standings? All they want is the power, but they don't have the wherewithal to be able to exercise those powers to our well-being. But I'll yield for a second again, sir, so you can,
You
answer for
know,
us.
Mr.
I just have to give a
Chairman,
little comment.
it does not take long for one to see the narrative in Belize and how it has been used when political party wants to win election. If the Belizean people would go back and look over videos that are created and commercial, I mean, even if they want to check back on the Belizean affairs past show, they will
Mm-hmm.
see what we are talking about when we speak about bastardization of the Constitution and the creating of informal laws and unconstitutional state of emergency. I will play a clip to prove one of the section of the state of emergency that is unconstitutional. And I want the Belizean people to hear it because
Go right ahead, sir.
it is still happening. It is still happening. This one I am sure they will
Officers,
understand why.
informing them that the practice of taking pictures of persons who are stopped and searched must be discontinued. The practice of police officers taking photographs of individuals during stops and searches has come under heavy scrutiny in the past, as some have labeled it as unconstitutional. In fact, as we have reported, Belize City residents Brighton Codd and Greg Nunes filed lawsuits against the Belize Police Department in December 2020 and January 2021 after their identification documents were photographed by police in separate instances. Neither of them were charged after being searched and photographed. Today, Honorable Karim Musa was asked if the decision to stop the picture-taking practice is as a result of the lawsuit.
We are a new administration and we do view things a little differently. We do have differences in opinion and beliefs in terms of our policy. And certainly the move that was made by issuing the memorandum to stop the profiling is not one done by any means because of a court case, but rather a shift in the policy. Especially myself as minister, I don't find that that is, and I don't want to in any way jeopardize the court case at hand. But just to say from a fundamental belief that I hold, that my CEO holds, it is something that we do not agree with, and hence we have discouraged and put to a complete stop the profiling of individuals. So I want to leave it at that because, as you know, it is pending before the courts for a determination, but by no means was it done because of that, but rather just a policy shift because of the new administration in place.
Then
right.
if that is true, Mr. Chairman, why is
Yes,
it
sir.
still happening? And it is a part of the SOE.
They talk a good talk, but they don't walk the walk. Simple as that. More than one time we have spoken about these matters to Mr. Chester, the commissioner, as well as to young Mr. Karim Musa on these matters. And they have waffled back and forward between them, disagreeing with each other on these matters. And as I promised them before, some of them are going to end up at the Hague. Not that we're bringing down more pressure on them, but then they take it seriously and then try, stand up in the corner and be defensive. Then just have to stop committing the crimes under the color of law. Simple as that. That's all we're asking for. We know they ask to make one example of them so that they could see that, yes, what we're saying have some merits or have some power behind us. But they feel like they are immune because they have the governance powers in their hands. And they fail to understand and remember that what we are talking to them about is things that are beyond free government's level in terms of forcing them and bring them to accountability. Not by them forcing each other to be accountable, because they have never intended to be accountable. We're talking about bringing pressures on them with other powers to be. And unless they straighten up and do what's right, they'll have to get straightened up one way or the other. Go ahead, Greg. Sorry about that. I was looking for a little part of the Constitution here.
Mr. Chairman, as I said before, the narrative.
I'm listening.
If people listen to the narrative and watch what these individuals do, it will not take long for them to find out what is going on. Another example is us talking right here on Belizean affair so many times about campaign financing. Now, I want you to hear this coming from the Prime Minister.
Well, then that's something that has to be taken. We have to take a hard look at, and we've been trying to find ways on how we can come up with some form of campaign finance legislation, because there's no legislation. But it's important that we be able to put something that can work. The United States, for instance, as an example for the presidential elections, they have campaign finance legislation, and it's running them over $1 billion per candidate. Is that campaign finance, this legislation is working? Absolutely not. So we need to find one that can work. I wish we could find one that would limit the amount of ads that you give and T-shirts and everything else, because then it will make it easier for the political parties. So it's something that I support and we're looking at, and hopefully we can come up with something that can work for Belize. But it's not about the political.
Now listen to that. We have a prime minister telling on himself. Now imagine.
They always do, Greg.
Now ain't that
Go
a
ahead.
shame? Go ahead.
Huh? Greg, I can't hear you.
I said we have a prime minister telling on himself. Talking about campaign financing when the finance group just called him out for campaign financing when he said he would not sit and talk with them.
He's a
Trying to
scofflaw.
let the people know like he has no association with them until the bean was spilled that he had received millions in campaign financing.
Mhm. That's all these
Go
guys
ahead,
are
sir.
interested in, receiving money and kickback from whoever big wigway could come to the country and hobnob with them. They don't care about the small people them where vote for them, because them pay them $50 to them people, and that's all they owe them people. When they finish paying them $50 for that vote, they don't want to see them no more. They ain't go on hustling junkie trips. But I just wanted us to read this. I just wanted to read here. The Belize Constitution, Cap 4, Part 5, dealing with the executive powers. Section 36, subsection 1 reads as follows. The executive authority of Belize is vested in Her Majesty. I hope I didn't say Mr. Briseño, because then I'll be playing for any kind of game, hoodwink the people, right? So let me read it over again just to make sure that I didn't say Mr. Briseño. Let me turn this thing sideways too, by the way, because oh shucks, man. Holy Toledo. I messed up just now. I turned the thing sideways and then it got reduced. Yeah, okay, I got it back. I was trying to make it comfortable for my reading purposes. The executive authority of Belize is vested not in Mr. Briseño, but actually is vested in Her Majesty, who is now dead, and that power has been inherited or taken over by His Majesty, the son of the previous Her Majesty, right? Queen Elizabeth, but taken over now by King Charles. These guys want to have their own election apparently at some point and elect their own head of state. And there shouldn't be nothing wrong with that for an independent country to do that. But they fail to understand one basic, simple principle that is behind the system of Belize governance, which we put in place before we accepted independence as part of the negotiation with Mr. Price. That Mr. Price was only going to be able to get independence if we acceded to his demand. And for him to get us to accede for his demand meant that he had to bargain with us. which is what we called in those days a Faustian bargain. And the Faustian bargain part from our side was we will cooperate with him, agree to go into a united country independent status under him as leader of the country, so he could become the first leader of the independent Belize, but that we will only take that independence under the Commonwealth as a guaranteed chip against the Guatemalan hegemony and claim, bogus claim against we country. That is what that was all about. And so far, it has worked well until now when Mr. Briceño decides that with his super majority now that we gave him, he gonna try and take we power and do what he want with it instead of what we ask him to do. You don't know you could end up in jail if you try to do that, because there's such a thing as you call sedition. But I guess that no bother him. Because he and turn me all into sovereign citizen. And we are declare ourselves with sovereignty as citizens of the sovereign Belize to dispense with the sovereign head of state. I don't know if they maybe want to put the head on the block and chop him up like what the French they may do. But realistically speaking, until Mr. Briceño is able to accomplish that objective, which is to dispatch the present head of state, he will not become head of state. He will become the head. He will continue maybe being prime minister, or somebody else will continue being prime minister after he demits or after he's kicked out or whatever his colleagues want to do with him, after they find out how treacherous he is in terms of the political issues and others, spending so many hundreds of millions of dollars out of coffers where the other politicians could have been using a Fidel division for federal Fidel division and do service for their constituents, which is what the funds is all about from government, to manage the affairs of government, not to pressure the public to come up with funds for him to go run around, go give him body Mr. Ashcroft. But let me read the thing, okay? Because subject to the provision of this constitution, the executive authority of Belize may be exercised on behalf of Her Majesty by the Governor General, either directly or through officers subordinate to him or her, the Governor General. I'll read it again, so I make sure everybody understands what I say. Part 5 of the Constitution of Belize, Cap 4, Section 36, subsection 1 and 2 reads as follows. The executive authority of Belize is vested in Her Majesty or His Majesty. Subsection 2 says, subject to the provision of the Constitution, the executive authority of Belize may be exercised on behalf of His Majesty by the Governor General, either directly or through officers subordinate to her. So if the Governor General is supposed to be a figurehead according to the PUP mantra or the teachings, how then does the Governor General is superior to the Prime Minister? Or how come the Prime Minister, to whom the Governor General delegate or assent power of governance to, and the Prime Minister can't govern the country without that happening? How come the Prime Minister is a subordinate to the Governor General, who is supposedly account to the PUPM, just a figurehead? You know, got no authority or no powers or no, nothing to do with, how the country run or what happens in the country, or you have no powers over the constitution of the country or over the Governor General or over the executive of the country, because according to them, the executive of the country is the cabinet. Do they understand how the cabinet gets formed and how come the cabinet gets assented to? And that each member of cabinet has to go to the Governor General and swear their allegiance. There's two different things that they have to swear: an allegiance of office and an allegiance to the head of state. That's what part of what they're trying to get out of the Constitution, why they're trying to redo the Constitution. So, like I mentioned earlier, only if a subversive group of people, whether by military means, overtake the government or overthrow the government and declare a different constitution, or they could come about with a new constitution which will vanish the existing head of state. And even if they get the help of the Governor General to try to get that done, that now means that it will be accepted, or that it will be done with any kind of power or authority behind it. Because the Governor General works at the pleasure of the head of state. The Governor General don't have no power unto himself or herself to arbitrarily and capriciously dismiss the head of state. That's like asking or telling let me see which one are they. Okay, let's use an example. Tell Mr. Hyde, as Deputy Prime Minister, if he go dispatch the Prime Minister and tell the Prime Minister his services is not needed anymore, and for all intents and purposes, they are lock and down. No, they don't get rid of his services personally, but they are lock and down. Right? That's basically where the comparison is when you say the Governor General herself will accede to the Prime Minister and his minions in cabinet, overthrow the Governor General's boss, who is the head of state. Those things happen in republics and in other countries. Either the military overthrow or some other individuals overthrow, and that is what they're trying to head us into, so that they can have the powers unto themselves and they will dictate how that power is used. They won't have a Governor General, they won't have a head of state as a foreigner. They will have a head of state which is a local person at that time. They won't need a Governor General. They will have a Prime Minister which at that point would act in the capacity of a Governor General, someone who is beholden to the head of state. But for all intents and purposes, all these guys are doing is taking us all for a ride. And most people don't understand and could care less. And those who understand, for whatever reason, either they're on the take or they just want to change. They kind of feel like, okay, well, we should try and change. But they never look at the big elephant in the center of the circus. They always run around, they look at the least small clowns there. And the big elephant in the middle of the circus there, where they sit down on all our head, like Guatemala, with the bogus claim that he control the circus and the circus ring, and he must get the attention to validate his or her, because Guatemala is a female name, by the way. It's not a masculine name. They're not Guatemala. But I'm straying off the point. Let me. I'm still within time. Mr. Brackett, I'll yield back in a couple of minutes, sir. Just give me another couple of minutes here. Okay. I want to read section 37. There shall be a Prime Minister of Belize who shall be appointed by who? Who do you think? By Mr. Briseno? Section 36 of the Belize Constitution, subsection 1 reads as follows. There shall be a Prime Minister of Belize who shall be appointed by the Governor General. Because the Prime Minister is subordinate to the Governor General. It is the Governor General that gives the ascension to that power. Now imagine Mr. Stuart Leslie was sent the power of governance on behalf of the Governor General or on behalf of the head of state to the Prime Minister, who is his boss in cabinet. Hello? Mr. Prime Minister or Mr. Prospective Prime Minister, Mr. Belizean, would appoint Mr. Stuart Leslie as his cabinet secretary and then send Mr. Cabinet Secretary go appoint the Prime Minister as Prime Minister. Bunch of clowns. That they kind of show what we're watching at the circus. That's why the foreign minister called all of them a bunch of clowns in the circus. So I don't mean want to say it. They won over senior politicians and colleagues and power players among them. Tell them about themselves when you want to. I wish you'd tell them about himself in some of these regards, because he's also one of our prominent lawyers and very respectable constitutionalist. Whenever the Governor General has occasion to appoint a Prime Minister, he or she, the Governor General, shall appoint a member of the House of Representatives who is the leader of the political party which commands the support of the majority of the members of the House. And if no political party has an overall majority, he or she, the Governor General, shall appoint a member of that House who appears to him or her as Governor General to be likely to have the command of the support of the majority of the members of that House, provided that no person shall be appointed as a Prime Minister who has previously held the office of the Prime Minister for 3 parliamentary terms, either consecutively or in aggregate. And for this purpose, the expression parliamentary terms shall mean the period commencing on the date of the first sitting of the National Assembly after a general election and expiring at the date of the next ensuing dissolution of the National Assembly. That's clear. That's clear. I just want to read this one last part. Deputy Prime Minister. Section 38 of the Constitution of Belize reads as follows. The Governor General shall, acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister, designate a minister as Deputy Prime Minister, to whom the Prime Minister may from time to time deputize such of his function as he may specify. Deals with the Prime Minister and the absence of the Prime Minister. I don't want to deal with that. I want to go back. I want to get here to Minister of Government. Okay, I passed the section. I'll just forego that because we are running out of time. But quickly before I turn over to Mr. Brackett, we are indulging in these constitutional discussions here and review of case laws and things like those. We're trying to basically provide an education for the public that the Constitutional Reform Committee, or its present incarnation, the People's Constitution Committee or Commission, has not done, is not doing, and apparently will not get a chance to do. Because if they were to succeed at doing the educational part of the process so people can learn and know about their Constitution, it will take them some more time, and the Belizean administration time would run out. And they need to, or they are trying to get all of this stuff wrapped up before their time runs out. So for all intents and purposes, whatever the Constitution Committee had done up to now, and maybe whatever is left for them to be able to accomplish, they will not be able to teach the people enough of the Constitution, because then diddle-daddle, they wasted the first 8 months of the process. And even if they had the full time that was allotted to them, which was, I think, 18 months or something like that, they would still not have been able to do like what the other, what the name of the country, Greg? That was that Barbados? Greg?
Bahamas.
Bahamas. The Bahamas took a whole long time to get their constitution done, and just because they were working hand in hand with each other. Okay, as compared to our people that have hidden agendas that they're not letting the people know, they're not telling the people, and they want the people to go vote for thing when they don't know nothing about. So all we are trying to do is fill in the gap here as much as we can. I turn it back over to you, Greg. Greg?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. What is really happening is the present government, with its supermajority, has a hurdle that they cannot jump over, which is Section 3219 of our Constitution, which is protected by Section 20, which is called the basic structure that cannot be amended or cannot be written out of existence. That is why they are coming to the people to see if they can turn the people into sovereign citizens, asking them to give up their rights. When they well know that the only way to do that is to have a referendum. But beside that, if they had meant good and want to do good by the people, to really do a good job as the Bahamas did and strengthen the Belize Constitution, they could have simply have a plebiscite and know forthwith if the people was in agreement with them. But instead, they went ahead and they passed the PCC Act, which again, Section 22 in Chapter 5 is
Constitutional.
unconstitutional. As I said before, the DG cannot give any power to the present government. And Section 22 reads as follows. A referendum shall be conducted where the National Assembly passes a resolution declaring that the matter stated in the report, meaning the report that they are going around asking questions if the people want to change the constitution, whether the Belize constitution should be repealed and replaced or amended is of sufficient national importance that it should be submitted to the electors for their view through a referendum. So what this is specifying, if the National Assembly does not deem it or deem it necessary to go to a referendum, they
They
can
won't be born.
simply just say, we will change the constitution. And that is ludicrous.
Illegal at that.
Because again, that falls under national security, and we, the people, is responsible for national security. That is why a referendum must be held, and three things.
Greg? Oh, finish up. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
That is why a referendum should be held, and three things. Anything that has to do with Guatemala, anything that is violating your rights, Section 3219 of the Belize Constitution, and any change that they want to make. I turn it back to you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. On the point that you brought up earlier about the Governor General cannot assent any powers to the government that will trump or dispense with the head of state, her boss, 100% on target and correct. As regards to this particular document that they put in place for the commission, that commission has no power that is more than the prime minister, nor more than the legislators who will have to act on whatever they bring to that legislator. Nor does the legislator have any more powers than the governor general, nor does the governor general have more powers than the head of state. So once you line up all the horses there in the correct order, most people should be able to understand what's going on and what the sleight of hand is. I'll read this thing right now quickly. Let's hope that I could pull it up. Yeah, it looks like it can come up. Good, I'm happy. We have a few more minutes to go. I'll read this, hopefully before the time is run out. And Greg, if we need to go on a couple minutes more so that you could weigh in on it, right? Or make your final comment on it. I'd appreciate that, no? So, Belizeans at home and abroad, please indulge me with your patience for me to convey this information to you. There may be some of you who know about this before, and there may be some who have not the slightest idea what this is about, but I want to present it again for another time. It's an article that I wrote. And I presented it a while back. And it says the following comments was made by Leonard Brackett. And I titled the commentary, Belize Deputy Governor General, open bracket, a constitutional travesty and an untenable anomaly and a conflict of interest. I went on to say, Mr. Stuart Leslie, as Cabinet Secretary to the Government of Belize and Deputy Governor General of Belize, operates at the pleasure of the Prime Minister of Belize, who nominated him also for the position of, or to serve Cabinet's interests in both positions, as Deputy Governor General and as Cabinet Secretary, who then, as Cabinet Secretary, has the power to assent to the Prime Minister being a Prime Minister. And if that is not asked backward, like some people that say, I don't know what is. Okay? But I'll go forward. The Governor General of Belize, as a Belizean, according to the Constitution and required according to the Constitution, is appointed, assented to, by, and serves at the pleasure and interest of the Belize head of state, who is His Royal Highness King Charles of Great Britain and UK and Commonwealth. And the reason why he is the head of state, like I said before, we decided to strike that fast and bargain with Mr. Price that we will not allow him to become our own head of state and elect him as our head of state, because he brought nothing to the table in terms of our security criteria and needs. So we wanted to stay within the Commonwealth for our own defense purposes, as well as stability and the ability to maintain our borders. So far, we have been successful this many years after. The Governor General of Belize when there is an occasion, is nominated by the Prime Minister of Belize, who is subordinate to the Governor General, from whom the Prime Minister gets ascension or transfer of Belizean executive governance power. You all remember earlier in the program I mentioned who holds or controls the executive power of the country, right? Not Mr. Briceño, but His Majesty. And that power can be delegated through the Governor General, who acts in the capacity as representative of the head of state, to allow subordinates to the Governor General, such as the Prime Minister and other ministers, to exercise those powers. And they cannot exercise those powers without first going to the Governor General, swearing allegiance to the head of state and swearing allegiance to the Constitution of Belize. From whom the Prime Minister gets transfer of Belize executive governance powers after general elections, but who does not serve at the pleasure of the PM. In other words, the Governor General does not serve at the pleasure of the PM. The Governor General serves at the pleasure of the head of state. The Deputy Governor General also serves at the pleasure of the head of state, not at the pleasure of cabinet, for whom he is the Secretary of Cabinet as well. That's the bastardization of our Constitution and constitutional requirements and prerogatives. The Deputy Governor General of Belize, as a Belizean, is appointed and assented to by the Governor General of Belize to act as delegated Deputy Governor General of Belize in Governor General's absence, and serves at the pleasure and interest of the Governor General and the Belize head of state, who is His Royal Highness King Charles of Great Britain and the UK. The Deputy Governor General of Belize is nominated by the Prime Minister of Belize for the Governor General's assent. It is a constitutional travesty and an untenable anomaly and a conflict of interest to have the same person, being Mr. Stuart Leslie or anyone else, for the above noted matter of fact, to occupy or perform or exercise both functions as Cabinet Secretary, beholden to Cabinet and the Prime Minister, and as well as being the Deputy Governor General, as beholden to and serving at the pleasure and interest of the Governor General and of Belize's head of state and Cabinet and Prime Minister of Belize. There's a conflation and a confusion there that works out well for the Prime Minister and Cabinet, because they can have matters assented to that maybe the regular Governor General would not assent to, because if the Governor General know that they're trying to commit sedition to overthrow the head of state, it would be the responsibility of the Governor General to not sign on to anything that would create that kind of a mischief. But I don't have no doubt that Mr. Stuart Leslie, as Cabinet Secretary beholden to the Prime Minister and Cabinet, as have been shown and proven in the past, would sign on to stuff that are illegal, unethical, questionable at least, and at worst, outright criminal, because it is a crime to sign anything under the Governor General's auspices or title in the absence of the Governor General, because you are the Deputy Governor General, while supporting a conspiracy against the interests of the head of state, who commands and controls the executive power of Belize. That's the end of my comment for tonight. I turn it back over to Greg for your last comment, sir.
I would like to say, firstly and foremost, I want to thank the Belizean people for tuning in. I also like to wish all mothers a happy Mother's Day and hope they have a wonderful and great weekend. You know, it's that time of the year when we should honor our parents, our mothers specifically, and some of our mothers are not here, but still, the blessings that was passed down by them, we cannot help but to remember what they have done for us. With that said, again, I would like to say a happy Mother's Day to all mothers.
Thank you,
Thank
Greg.
you, people at home and abroad, for tuning in.
I'd like to say
So,
happy
again,
Mother's Day to all the mothers as well, one and all. God bless Belize, Belizeans at home and abroad. Take it away, Greg.
thank you and good night.